Aloha and welcome back to the Kupuna Connections television series on Olelo. I'm Cullen Hayashida with the Kupuna Education Center at Kapi'olani Community College. And today we're talking about a very interesting topic having to do with mediating elder issues, obviously addressing issues related to family conflicts, perhaps. But let me first of all ask my guests and my co-hosts to themselves, starting out with Tony.
I'm Tony Hathaway, and I'm the Education Coordinator at the KCC Kupuna Education Center.
Hi, I'm Tracy Wilkin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Mediation Center of the Pacific. It's a nonprofit that helps people resolve their issues through mediation.
Oh, okay. And I guess most people are not really aware of the Mediation Center of the Pacific. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. No, unfortunately, most people don't know. We actually started back in 1979 as a neighborhood justice center. So some people know us as Neighborhood Justice Center. And the idea was to provide people with a safe, private forum to sit down and talk through their issues. And since that time, with the growth of mediation, the Mediation Center of the Pacific has grown. So today we serve about 5,000 people. We provide a lot of training, and we provide a lot of mediation in a variety of areas, such as family disputes that we'll be talking about, divorce, unmarried couples, focusing on where the kids are going to live and time sharing, employment matters, civil rights, condominiums, and we still do neighbor disputes.
Wow. Boy, you folks are an important resource in our community. Thank
We're
you.
busy.
Yeah. Well, let's start off, first of all, by addressing this whole issue. Well, we're talking about mediating elder issues. And I guess what comes to my mind is that we're talking about challenges and conflicts that perhaps occur in families whenever elder care is involved, and perhaps there's all kinds of different issues that come up. But tell us about, what do you find, and are there trends in this area?
Well, I think with the growing aging population itself, there are more challenges and more issues that have arisen, particularly for families. Family members are living longer, but sometimes that's not always a healthy lifestyle, or there's challenges that come with that. And we all have a busier lifestyle. Family members are working, trying to earn a living with the economy going downwards. It's been really tough on families, and you have an elder family member that either you're concerned about, you don't know if they're getting the proper care, if it's safe for them to be driving, is somebody taking advantage of them, and we hear these stories all the time, to the opposite end of the spectrum, where we have children moving home, and the elder person feeling taken advantage of, anywhere from, my son's moved home and they're taking my car and they're taking my money and they're not doing anything to help. So the spectrum is really broad. The issues are growing, and families shouldn't be fighting about it in court. Families really need to be sitting down and having a conversation.
Yeah. Now, we have a slide here of some of the kinds of conflicts that you've identified, and perhaps we could share some of that with you as well. Can we see that slide there that we have with regards to family conflicts? There. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, there's a lot of different sources of conflict in this arena, and I think that's part of what makes it so challenging. First of all, different values and expectation. As children, we don't expect to grow up and be taking care of our parents, and sometimes it's hard to move out of that role. We still have certain ways that we respond to our parents, even though really the roles have changed. They need us. So, and then oftentimes the elder population, they may have different values than the younger population. The younger ones want to be working, and it may be that the older value was, I expected to be taken care of by my children when I aged. So that in itself, unreasonable expectation. You hear that the ideal is to remain in your home, but oftentimes you'll see elders who it's just overwhelming for them to try and take care of their house. They want to do it themselves. And then the children end up in a dilemma. They want their parents to be independent. So there's just a lot of different types of conflicts and issues that are woven into this area.
Okay.
Well, let's say that there's there is a conflict around an elder in the family. So how do families that experience that preserve their family relationships?
That's a great question. Ideally, families should be having these difficult conversations early on. But those are hard conversations, and we don't want to think about it. We want to be thinking about that I might be older and not be able to take care of myself or be independent. A lot of older people don't want to be thinking about that their children have to take care of them. So by having those conversations early can help with planning, can help with expectations, where everybody sees each other's role. And that's where mediation comes in, because mediation basically, even though it's really grown, it's in the legal community, mediation is about sitting down and having hard conversations with the assistance of an impartial third party, the mediator. And that's really what families need to do. So to preserve that relationship, instead of everybody has their expectations but doesn't talk about it, or you don't think about the issues that you're going to be addressing. And let me give you a more specific example. So, you have siblings and they've created their own lives, they have their own families, and suddenly mom and dad, health is deteriorated and they need help. So one sibling jumps in and says, I can help. And the other sibling says, well, I'll handle the financial responsibility. And so that goes along for a while till suddenly the sibling that's doing the actual physically helping feels burned out or becomes resentful or starts becoming suspicious. Is my sibling really why should he or she be taking care of the finances? And then by that time, the relationship starts breaking down, and it's harder to have those conversations. So,
do you find it more a problem with communicating among, say, Asian families in comparison to other families, you think?
I think it just depends on the family.
Okay.
I don't think you can just say, one ethnic background or another. I think it's how families have been raised, the comfort level. I mean, I know, some people grow up in homes where you just don't have those discussions, and it's their style as opposed to their cultural background, how they were raised, how they grew up. So.
Well, and I guess, as you said, I think these kinds of discussions are difficult for most families, and exactly the form it takes might be a little different depending on what the cultural background is.
Sure.
But I guess what you're saying is in mediation is really that the key thing is that impartial third person who can maybe point things out to people that and they can hear it in a way that they couldn't hear it from another family member.
Right. Well, it's helping people start moving into having those conversations. What we see now is there's already conflict. They haven't talked about it, or they're moving. For example, as I said earlier, you have grown children, they have their own families and their own lives, and suddenly they become aware, mom and dad aren't doing it anymore. And then they want to take it upon themselves to move mom and dad where they think it's appropriate and not give their parents the opportunity to say what they want. Maybe the parents do want to stay in their own home, and the kids think, well, this is going to be too much work. And instead of having a conversation, okay, well, if you want to stay in your own home, how can we assist with that? What resources are there out there? And try to work both with the elders' concerns. They want to be as independent as possible. And sometimes in busy lives, it's easier to make a decision. So a mediator will make sure that everybody has the opportunity to share what their concerns are, where they're coming from. Once there's trust and these issues come out, then a mediator can basically help people negotiate, and negotiate from the perspective of what we call interests. And interests are what's important to each of you. When we see families that get to that point where they're accessing outside help, the emotions are getting in the way. It's usually not that a daughter wants to control the life of the elderly parent. The daughter's afraid. I'm afraid you're going to fall. That's why I don't want you to be alone.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm afraid I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be at work, and you're going to need help, and I won't be available. And we help bring those things out so that they can hear each other in a better way that can help them move forward and have good conversations. It's not that dad's being difficult. Dad loves his house. And Dad's having a hard time, saying, I can't drive anymore. Right. And to make those transitions, is difficult.
Yeah. Let's go back to the word that this is all about, mediation.
Okay.
What is this, and how does this work anyway?
That's a good question, because most people don't understand, and maybe that's why people don't always access it. Basically, it's a process where we bring people together in a safe environment, and we help people talk. And the way we do that, so if somebody wants to access mediation, we schedule it at a time and day that works for them. We assign, and I'll talk about, there are other mediation resources out there. For us, we assign a mediator, and then they come together and they meet with the mediator. And initially, you meet together, and a mediator will set out some ground rules for the process. They talk about what they'd like to achieve, but then they meet privately. So the mediator will go back and forth, meeting privately with each person. If you're talking about a whole family, they might meet with each family member individually. They might meet with some of them together. Depends on the issues and depends on where each person is at. And this process can take a few hours. The key is, initially, we want to develop a relationship with them where they trust us, where they're going to share everything. And what we're doing is we're asking a lot of questions to get the bigger story out. Because when you think about it, when you're angry with somebody, you're not thinking about what's important to me, what's important to them. You just know you're angry. And so you're not getting the bigger story. We help them, by going through this process, understand each other's perspectives. Once we've done that, and we get their story and we get the issues and what's important, then we keep going back and forth in private sessions and start helping them negotiate. If they're able to reach agreement, we can help them put it into writing, if that's helpful to them, to develop a family plan. Whatever works for that family. The other important things, a couple key things about mediation, it's private, it's confidential. So if it does go the next step and become a legal, formal action, as a mediator, we're not going to go and testify, we're not going to go provide information. That is confidential. And so that's important. And the other part of it is, even though we're assisting with the process, anybody can stop it at any time. So somebody could say, I'm not really comfortable, I don't feel this is productive, and I want to end this process. And sometimes what happens is maybe people aren't ready, maybe emotions are high, but then they'll come back and try it again later. So I guess my point being, there's a lot of flexibility in the mediation process. Sounds simple, but it's not always.
It's not always, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's quite complicated when you have a number of people involved. What kinds of decisions can be discussed in mediation?
Everything. So it could be everything and anything from who's going to manage the finances of the elder person, whether or not they should be driving, how to transition them out of their home, how responsibilities will be shared among family members. And when I talk about the adult children and the parents, there are other people involved. You could have professionals involved who are providing some professional advice, and there's so many resources out there, and often people don't know about them until suddenly you're in a situation where you go, I need help. So it might be gathering resources, bringing professionals in to participate in decisions about what's the next best step for this elder person. It could be issues such as which is something we're seeing more of, an elder person who's been living in a condominium, but as they've aged and maybe they have early signs of dementia or other things going on, and they're acting out, or their behaviors don't fit in with the rules and policies. The board doesn't know how to deal with it. It could be bringing in the family and the elder person to come up with a plan to make sure that they're not in violation of house rules and bylaws, but how they're going to work through those issues. It can even be elders who have their own issues. So we've seen elders come in with landlord-tenant issues. We've even seen elders who come in. We had an elderly gentleman a few years ago in his very late 80s who was having a problem with his girlfriend, who was also in her late 80s. So it could run the gamut. We've seen people in living in assisted living or community living, and not assisted living, community living, who are having disputes with their neighbors. So it could be a broad range of issues that you bring in to help them focus on and reach agreement.
Wow.
You know, your point that this whole process is considered confidential seems to suggest that there's a number of safeguards that's built into this whole process, and that you've got to have skilled people doing this work. So, who is this mediator, and and how do we know whether or not there's certain things that the mediator does or does not do?
Okay. Let me talk about the Mediation Center of the Pacific first, and then I'll speak in general. At the Mediation Center of the Pacific, our mediators are volunteers, so we're very fortunate. They're highly trained professionals. So to be an effective mediator, first of all, you need to go through mediation training and learn the skills. There's a lot of skills and tools that we use to help people talk, to help people listen to each other, and we learn that through training. In specific areas, such as the elder area, you want individuals that have background and knowledge. If it's a relationship-based issue, that's different. You can use good mediation skills, but now if you're talking about, is the person competent to participate? Is a guardianship proceeding appropriate? Now you're talking about real specific knowledge that a mediator needs. So you need somebody that has the subject matter expertise as well as good mediator skills, which involve good people skills and really good listening skills. So our mediators go through a lot of training, and then in an area like this, we would make sure not only that we have somebody who's experienced, who's gone through specialized training, but also has the background so that there's an appropriate fit. There are a lot of professional mediators out there. If you access a private mediator, you have the opportunity to look at their background and bio to select them.
One of the things that we have that you brought with you were some slides on mediators' competence, and perhaps we could see them as well.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely a mediator needs to be impartial, and by that I mean, as mediators we don't take sides. So I'm not there to give anybody legal advice. I'm not there to tell you what to do. And I'm not there to make a decision. But I'm there to listen to everybody, make sure everybody has the opportunity to share what they need to share, and make sure everybody can express their ideas. That's really key. And again, to maintain confidentiality. I'm not going to go out.
That's a big one.
Absolutely. I'm not going to go out and talk about what I heard, and I'm certainly not going to testify in court for either one.
I see.
Self-determination. This is a key cornerstone of mediation, and I think particularly in this area is critical. And that's ensuring that the parties or the participants themselves come up with their own solutions. I might suggest something as a mediator if people are really stuck, but at no point do I say, this is really a good idea, you should do this. That's not my job. And particularly when you're talking about an elder arena, I think there's still a lot of confusion. I mean, it's tough for all of us. If somebody has dementia, it doesn't mean they can't make decisions for themselves. It depends where they're at that point. If somebody's having a hard time managing their finances, it doesn't mean they can't express that they want to live in their house or do housework. I mean, so there's a lot of different levels, as you're aware, of being experts in this arena. So as mediators, it's making sure that everybody at the table has that power to come up with their own solutions. It's that self-determination. Making sure we provide accommodations for everybody to be able to participate. For example, if the elderly parents are going to participate, do they do better in the afternoon or the morning? When are they more alert? Are they on medication? Is it difficult for them to get to the mediation center? Would it be easier if we met with everybody where they're living? So making sure we provide accommodations for them to participate. And participant safety. And by that I mean, not physical violence, but making sure that everybody feels safe expressing what they want, that nobody's overpowering the other, that there aren't power imbalances, such as 6 grown-up kids making a decision about what they want for dad.
Right.
So there's a lot of dynamics in it,
Wow. A lot of
that's
skills
really
that you
skilled.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And that's why you have all that training, I guess, to go
Exactly.
through it, so that people are trained mediators.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
I'd just like to take a moment to sort of welcome some of our viewers who might have joined us. This is the Kupuna Connections television show, and today we're talking with Tracy Wilkin from the Mediation Center of the Pacific on mediation and elders. And our program is sponsored by the Kapi'olani Community College Kupuna Education Center. And to reach us about more information about these programs, our website is www.kupunaeducation.com. And now we're going to return to our discussion. And we've been talking about mediation. So who all participates in the mediation itself?
Well, again, it depends on the issue, and it depends on who needs to participate. So it could be family members, it could be outside professionals. Sometimes what happens is we will get a call from the grown children, and they have concerns about the well-being of their elder parent or moving the parent into assisted living. And so the question we ask is, what about your parent? Will they participate? Well, no, my brother and I or my sister and I need to talk about this. Well, why wouldn't your parent participate? So we ask them the question, who do you think needs to participate? It could be an auntie, it could be an uncle, it could be a friend of the elder person. So whoever is involved in the issues and whoever might be impacted by the decision making needs to be there. So there's a lot of flexibility in the process. We're not going to dictate, no, you can't have this person there, or you should have this. We want to talk about what are the issues, who's involved in the issues, and who's going to be impacted by the decisions that you're making. And even if they only participate in part of the process, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Yeah.
But so if there's indications that maybe mom is not going to be participating, when in fact you think in back of your mind she should be, would you be inclined not to proceed with the mediation process?
That's it. What we would ask, we would suggest something like, well, why don't we have one session and include mom in the session, and maybe we make it a shorter session because we're hearing from, if it's the children, impression of what has the doctor said, has she been to a doctor? And so we'll suggest that, even if we have a shortened session, to get a sense of what are the dynamics like, what is the mom like, does she seem like she has the capacity to participate?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we would suggest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's. We've got just a few more minutes here, but perhaps we could share some things about some of the advantages of mediation.
Mediation, as I have repeated, it's a great opportunity for families to have difficult conversations. It's an opportunity to preserve family relationships, especially as they start breaking down. There's a lot of stress and strain put on families, and it can prevent families moving that next step to go for a guardianship proceeding. It can maintain the dignity of the older person by giving them an opportunity to have their say and express their concerns and needs. And can really, as I mentioned, clarify the real issues and interests. It's not about controlling somebody, but generally it's about everyone's own personal fears and concerns. Kids want to see the right thing happen for their parents. They want their parents to be safe. And it can really enhance family communication and collaboration because that's what families are all about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We have another batch of advantages there as well, I guess you can identify.
Exactly. So it's, again, shared decision making. So often I'll hear that one sibling took on all the responsibilities and then becomes resentful. And so it's a way that everybody can feel that they're part of. Everybody wants to be a part of helping take care of elderly family members. And I keep talking about mom and dad, but oftentimes it could be auntie, it can be uncle, it can be grandparents.
So it kind of gets everybody talking together
Exactly.
about whatever the issue is.
Exactly. And coming up with a family plan to address it so no one family member feels burdened. The elder person doesn't have to feel like a burden, which sometimes that can be the horrible thing as well. And it's also getting people out to work with professionals and get the information they need. Sometimes people feel that, well, I don't know what to do. By asking questions and referring them out to get the resources and information they need, they can come up with better plans. And again, they can gain appreciation of each other.
Well, how would I schedule a mediation session? Who do I call?
Well, you can call the Mediation Center of the Pacific.
And we have a slide for that too,
Yes, that's
right?
521-6767. And we also have our website there at mediatehawaii.org. And so Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., our Client Services Department will take calls of individuals who would like to schedule a mediation or even just to talk about whether their issue is appropriate. And then they will schedule a mediation at the time and day that's convenient for them. And I think that's the other important thing is we offer mediation in the day, the afternoon, and 2 evenings a week and Saturday morning.
Wow,
You know,
that's
one
wonderful.
question that I forgot to ask earlier on, though, is there a cost associated with this service?
And there is. We charge on a sliding fee scale according to household income. So
Okay.
somebody in a very low income bracket, we'd waive the fee. It's a flat rate. It's a very modest fee, and it's a flat rate for the session.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Now, with the remaining time that we have, perhaps, you know, we've got viewers that have heard a lot of information about this whole issue, and this is great stuff. Perhaps if you had to leave one last recommendation or tip for our viewers, what would that be?
I think my most important recommendation would be to access mediation first, access it early. Too often I see families become entrenched and become overwhelmed and frustrated, and then they access attorneys and the legal system. And you know, ideally you want families to work it out instead of taking each other to court. You know, lawyers and courts are important, but you want families to try and work it out first. So that's what I would really encourage.
Okay, that's great. So that's about all the time that we have today. So thank you very much for all of you watching the Kupuna Connections television program on mediating elder issues. See you again next week. Aloha.